prayed for God's wisdom. The book of James chapter 1 from 5 to 6 state that if any of you lacks wisdom, he should ask God, who gives generously to all without finding fault, and it will be given to him. But when he asks, he must believe and not doubt, because he who doubts is like a wave of the sea, blown and tossed by the wind. And Proverbs chapter 9 verse 10 also says, the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and knowledge of the Holy One is understanding. Prayed for wisdom. King Solomon, when he became king, one thing he prayed for, one thing he asked the Lord for was wisdom. And God granted his request. The first case he had, even though he had many cases that he had to judge, but it was the story about the two prostitutes, which is found in 1 Kings chapter 3, 16 to 28. The two prostitutes were living in one house and were sleeping in one room. The two of them gave birth to two sons. One of the prostitutes gave birth to a son, a boy child, and the other prostitute gave birth to a boy child as well. The Bible says while they were asleep, one of them mistakenly slept on her child, and her child suffocated and died. She woke up midnight to breastfeed the child and noticed that the child was dead. So she quickly switched the child, exchanged her child with her friend's child that was still alive. When her friend woke up and noticed that child was dead and that child wasn't hers, she decided to approach her friend. Say, this child is not mine. I think this dead child is yours. The one who mistakenly slept on her child and killed her child insisted that the child wasn't hers. So they had to take the case to King Solomon. King Solomon, being a wise king, someone who requested God's wisdom and was using it as a king, had to make judgment to know who actually owned that child. So he had to test the both of them to be able to actually know who has the child. And so when the both of them explained, he ordered his guys to bring out his sword. When the sword was brought to him, he told his guys to cut the living child into two halves. Give one half to the other lady who claims that the child was hers, and give another half to the other lady who also claims that the child was hers. He actually wanted to know, he did that test to know who the child actually belongs to. So the lady who had the child, whose child didn't die, and because of selfishness and wickedness, her friend had to exchange her child, her dead child, with her living child. She said, no, Mr. King, don't cut the child, the living child, into two halves. Just give the child to my friend, since she says the child is hers. instead of you cutting the child into two halves. Because if you cut the child into two halves, the child will also die. So don't do it. The other lady who slept on her child and her child died, she said, no, kings, cut the child into two halves. Give me one half and give her another half. And right there, the king came up with his solution. He said, this lady who insisted that we shouldn't cut the child into two halves, indeed, this child belongs to her. And afterward, she confessed and said she slept on her child and exchanged the child. Right there, everyone got to know the wisdom of King Solomon. So that's the wisdom of King Solomon. And that's how everyone started to understand the importance of wisdom. Fellow brothers and sisters, yesterday was King Solomon. Today is you and I. We need God's wisdom to guide us, more especially leaders. Leaders need God's wisdom to guide them. That's why James is telling us in James chapter 1, verse 5 to 6. James is telling us to ask God for wisdom. In the home, every mother needs God's wisdom. In the home, every father needs God's wisdom. In the church, the pastor needs God's wisdom. The deacon needs God's wisdom. The members of the church need God's wisdom. Everyone in the church needs God's wisdom for the church to be on path. There are times for major decisions in the church, and it requires God's wisdom to come up with these decisions. So let all of us pray for God's wisdom. To our leaders, the president of the nation, you need to also pray for God's wisdom. The representatives also need to pray for God's wisdom. The senators need to pray for God's wisdom because they are making laws on behalf of us. So in order for these laws to take effect, for these laws to benefit us, they need God's wisdom. Because the wisdom of God is the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom. So all of them need to fear God and request for God's wisdom. And as you are requesting for God's wisdom, you should believe in your heart that when you request for God's wisdom, He will give it to you. The superintendents, the city mayors, the commissioners, the town chiefs, and every leader in our country needs God's wisdom. I'm encouraging everyone this morning who is under my voice to pray for God's wisdom. If our country must move forward, we need to ask for God's wisdom. We need to pray for God's wisdom because the fear of the Lord is the beginning of wisdom, and we also need to fear the Lord. We should do things in accordance to what the Lord says. We shouldn't be going contrary to what the Lord says and then be requesting for His wisdom. It's not possible. So let us fear the Lord and ask for His wisdom, because His wisdom will guide us. His wisdom will lead us. His wisdom will make us to make sound decisions. We will make decisions that will benefit our homes, that will benefit our schools, that will benefit our children, that will benefit the church, that will benefit the community, and will benefit the nation as well. So it's my prayer that God will help us to pray for His wisdom. All we need to do is just to take it to the Lord in prayer And God will answer us to give us wisdom. May God bless these words in Jesus' name.